Dead by Daylight's Halloween event for 2025 is simply mediocre at best, and there are two reasons as to why this is the case. And before I proceed any further, I just want to put it out there that I am not trying to overly complain about this event, and I'm not saying that this is the worst event that's ever happened. This event has just not met the quality expectations that I would expect, so I just feel like there's a lot of slight issues that are contributing to an overall bland or less interesting event experience for everybody. So just going to put that out there. So with the Halloween event for 2025, there are two main reasons why this event is just not meeting that higher threshold of what makes a good event in DBD. The first reason has to do with the Void Crystals. In the previous Halloween events, the Void Crystals essentially worked as fog vials, which are now, a core item in the game. So to make the Void Crystals a little bit more special this time around, they made it so that the Void Crystals can now actually repair a gen remotely for you. So basically, once you obtain a Void Crystal, you can attach it to a generator and it will continue to repair a generator for, I believe it's just under a fourth of the repair progress in total. So it takes a little bit of time, but it will repair just under like 25% of the total gen charges. Now, when I first heard about this mechanic, I thought there were a variety of ways that this could be potentially game breaking. I wasn't quite sure what to expect because, as I've learned with many events in the past, you just never know how good or bad some event items or how the event itself will actually go for either survivors or killers. Or, in the rare instance, maybe it's balanced for everybody. So I was going in with an open mind with how they interacted with generators. But the problem I have with the Void Crystals is that they are actually too good in the right hands. For instance, if you're the last survivor remaining and everyone else is slugged or on hook and you're basically the last chance to save everybody, if you have a generator that you are pretty close to completing, but you need to go in to rescue people, otherwise they're about to die and, the match will be over for everybody, you need to finish the gen somehow, but also save everybody. So in this case, what you do is if you have a Void Crystal, you can use that to finish repairing the gen for you, remotely basically, and then you can also go save people at the same time. So it really makes it so that in certain situations where a killer has the ability to snowball, or if the signs of victory for the killer are like within their grasp, they essentially lose because a survivor is able to both repair a generator at the same time as saving everybody on their team. So that's a bit of a problem in itself. But there's other layers to the Void Crystals and how they work with gen repairs. One thing I noticed in particular is that Void Crystals do work with Ruin. So with Ruin, if you step away from a gen and it's active, the gen will slowly regress with time. However, if you set up a Void Crystal on the generator will of course continue to repair, thus making Ruin worth nothing at that point. So if this worked with Ruin, I also have to imagine this works with Merciless Storm, so this might also make Merciless Storm worthless, but I have no concrete information on that. The other issue with Void Crystals is that they do not count as conspicuous actions, which means that you can have Decisive Strike active and also use a Void Crystal on a generator, so you can repair a generator, quote unquote, while still having Decisive Strike active. Now, this all feels like a major oversight from my perspective because I have absolutely no idea why this would not count as a conspicuous action. You basically are able to have DS active and also still repair a gen at the same time. It just feels like common sense to me. This also could just be a bug that was never fixed fully and they just let it go to live, so who really knows? But regardless if this is a bug or an oversight, I don't care either way because this should simply not be in the game. You should not be able to repair generators still while also having Decisive Strike. And mind you, this is a remote repair, so you can basically run around the map still having Decisive Strike active and able to repair gen. Even if you're only repairing 20% or so of a generator, that's still significant progress, especially nowadays with the amount of slowdowns that happen. Now, the other main reason why this event is mediocre is because the Void itself is just not interesting anymore. Now, when the Void was first introduced, I felt like the concept was very interesting and kind of a refreshing idea on what they could do with events. I think introducing a alternate place you could go to in a trial was a very unique concept for DBD. I also thought maybe this was just testing for a possible killer power that we'd see down the road. It's yet to be seen if that is the case, of course, but I still feel like this concept with having a alternate place to go to in a match is a very neat idea, and I feel like this is something that has serious untapped potential. So I really do enjoy the void itself and the idea of having another place to go to and be chased. However, that's kind of where the positives stop for me, because I feel like the void in this recent iteration is just simply not as interesting as it could be or it used to be. What was something that they were expanding on with introducing more interactables and more of a structure inside the void itself, they've now gone backwards and they've removed some of the structure that was in the void, and now there's even less like pallets and window vaults, I believe, as well. And most of the pallets that are in the void are basically on the edge, and a couple of them are just double pallets, so it's nothing that's really that crazy or interactable as a killer from my perspective. And then outside of changing and removing some of the structure, they also made it so that the haunts or the ghosts or whatever, they now hinder you as a survivor. So if you get caught by one of the ghosts, you scream and then you move a little bit slower for a little bit. So by removing some of the structure and then making the ghosts now a hindrance for survivors, it already does not make me want to go into the void as a survivor. It just feels like a death trap. And then there's this other problem, which is if you're playing Survivor, you have absolutely no idea if your fellow survivors are in the void. You have no way to confirm if they are in the void or not. The only way you can kind of tell is if they're injured, they will go broken when they're in the void, and then when they exit the void, they will not be broken anymore. But that's not always the perfect indicator, because a survivor could have a perk or a killer could have a perk that makes them broken, so you have no way of knowing if they are actually in the void or not. But then the best twist about all of this is that as a killer, you can see which survivors are in the void. And I don't think it makes any fucking sense that a survivor cannot see if their fellow survivors are in the void or not, but a killer can see that information. In my head, why does a killer have access to more information on what survivors are doing on the HUD than a survivor does? A survivor should be able to see if their other survivors are in the main trial or if they're in the void, because that's crucial information to decide if you need to go for a save or not. So I've now encountered at least a few matches where I've basically sat on a gen assuming these other survivors were going to go for a save, but instead the survivor on hook went to second stage because I guess these other survivors were just in the void. The fix for this, of course, is very simple. You should be able to make it so that survivors can see if other fellow survivors are in the void, because to me, that's pretty crucial information. Just like if I want to see if a survivor is repairing a gen, or cleansing a totem, opening an exit gate, whatever it is, I should be able to see if they're in another dimension within the trial. That just seems like common sense to me. The biggest disappointment for me is that I feel like the void itself is just truly untapped potential, and something that really can be expanded upon if they just tried a little bit more and actually made it something that's interactable for everybody. Even if it's something like if you go to the void, it's like a big risk reward thing for either side. Like if you down a survivor as a killer in that, you get a like boost to your, haste or something. I don't, just something along those lines. And it translates over to the others, main match in the actual map and realm. And then as survivor, if you maybe stay alive in the void for at least like 30 to 60 seconds or something, you get some sort of boost in the main map and realm. I just feel like there's a lot of untapped potential with encouraging people to interact in the void and also make it something that is fun for both sides. So I just find this whole event mediocre for everything I've just listed. Now, the event itself is still an enjoyable experience from time to time, but it's just overall not the most enjoyable event that it could be. And I believe with the Halloween event in particular, it deserves to have a higher quality standard because it's basically the peak time for DBD with horror and, everything spooky, if you will. So it's an event that on paper should be good, but it's just going backwards. It's not moving things forward. It's not changing things for the better. The event is just mediocre. That's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.